So once we have our moccasin template, our next step is to trace it onto leather and then cut it out. You can use the same template for both feet. You would just need to flip the template over to trace. For this example, I'll be tracing on the smooth side of the leather rather than the fuzzy side, which would help cover any markings, as this side will be the inside of the moccasin when we put it together. I like to grab something of weight to help hold down the template so that I can trace it accurately. In my preference, a pencil is more ideal to make any markings on the leather so that it will not bleed through over time if it were a pen. Keep in mind there is not one way to make moccasins. Everyone has their own techniques and tricks, as well as tribes have their own styles. So here I like to make small marks where the center would be. This will help later in another video when we cut the opening for the foot. Next step, I'm going to make markings about 1/4 of an inch from the tracing. I will cut along this dotted line to create a binding strip, which will be placed between the moccasin leather and sole when we put it together. A binding strip will help protect the seams of the moccasin. Here I'll be using a rotary cutter to cut the leather. Next, I'll be showing you two styles of beading. It is important to note that Iowa moccasins have floral designs, sometimes with berries and vines. To distinguish Iowa moccasins from other tribes, a white row of beads always outlines the rest of the beadwork. You can see that I have made my design by using a folded paper, then tracing it onto the stabilizer. Traditionally, I would bead on a leather, but with contemporary changes, and in this example, I'll be using a quilting stabilizer to bead my floral designs on, which then I will cut these out and sew them onto the moccasins. The reason I do this is to help speed the process of beading, as it is difficult to sometimes bead on leather depending on the thickness. When beading on leather, you'll want to make sure you are beading about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the leather, so that you have enough room to sew the top of the moccasin to the hard sole. So here I am, threading my needle and tying a knot. You should double your thread and use about 2 arms length of thread for good measure. For the first style of beading, I will be using one needle. We will begin by picking up 6 beads and going back 3 beads. So I'll bring up the needle and then pick up 6 beads. You can lay your beads out and pick them up one by one, or you can work off the line. You will have to have good judgment of where to tack down your needle. Once I have tacked down my beads, next I will come back up with my needle, but this time it will be between the beads. So I picked up 6, now I will come back up between the 3rd bead. Once my thread is through, with my needle, I will go through the last 3 beads. Then we start over again by picking up 6 beads and coming back up the 3rd. Some people pick up 4 and then go back 2, which is great because your beads won't roll around. I wouldn't recommend picking up 8 for this technique, as this will make your beadwork loose and easier to rip after long use. For this next method, I will be using 2 needles. One will serve, as I would like to say, as a loader because I load my beads onto, and the other as a tack down. I will begin the same by coming up from the bottom, adding as many beads as I wish. Then, I will use my other needle to come up and tack down every 3 beads. Remember to have good judgment of where to tack down. While beading is sometimes hard in the beginning, once you practice, it'll get easier over time. You will want to hold your loader thread away so your tack down thread doesn't get tangled. So here I am using the tack down needle, which I will use to tack down after every 3rd bead. I will continue to do this until the beads are all tacked down. To add on beads, I would simply use the loader thread to go back and through the last bead, then add beads. Or pull the loader thread back out, add more beads, and then tack down again.